And there you go. Hey, and we're recording now so that people can watch it from home. Great. So let me minimize this. Hey, all right. So before we get started, I'm just going to show you guys. Here's a session. We are going to go over this, but I usually like to break down kind of recording and overall the audio, the science side of things that we're working with here, because I think it is really important to know, the art as much as the science. So what are hertz? Hertz is basically the compression and refraction, or like the squeezing and expanding of air molecules. There's a meme out there that's like, what is music? Music is just squiggly air. This is exactly what this is. So hertz is basically the completed cycle of that compression and refraction X amount of times per second, which is going to give you your frequency. So, if that cycle happens 440 times per second, that gives you your note A. If that happens 260, I think it's 263 cycles per second, that's like middle C. Human hearing, we have 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, or 20,000 vibrations per second. I got my hearing test and I take really good care of my hearing. I think I topped out at like 17 kilohertz. 20 is like if you've never experienced the outside world ever, that's sort of like where your hearing might be. But for the most part, like, you're probably not having that high of a register. So 20 hertz being the lowest, 20 kilohertz being the highest. The more cycles per second, the higher the frequency is. Now that goes into what's called bit depth and resolution. So what is bit depth? Bit depth is basically the amount of, well, I guess I should, go back a little bit. When we have a microphone plugging into a digital interface or something like that, what's happening is the bit depth is the amount of plots on a graph that is basically taking a sample per second, or X amount of samples per second, to outline all the frequencies and harmonics that are being captured at one particular time. So basically that is, the higher your bit depth, the more accurate or the more realistic your recording will sound. And then the way that science works for resolution, you have to double the amount of frequencies that you want to hear. So since our hearing's at 20, when we record at normal CD quality 44.1, it's half of that, which is the 22.5 that's being recorded. That's pretty standard for CD recording. There's now a hi-fi recording which can go up to 192 kilohertz, and I think even higher than that. That's supposed to be like the closest thing of digital recording to vinyl. But also know that the amount of frequencies that you're capturing and the amount of plot points that you're putting on a graph, that will inherently increase the file size. So what could be a normal, 3 to, or I guess what it would probably be like 20 to 30 megabytes, could end up being something like, maybe a gigabyte worth of music for the same amount of time, just depending as to what resolution you're working with. So with 16-bit, it's 65,000 samples per second. So all those little plot points, that's basically, that many times per second is how many how many plots on the point we're putting on there. For an example, this is kind of what bit depth would be. That you're taking these plot points and it understands where all this stuff is. When you start working with elastic audio or with like Melodyne, what basically ends up happening is when you're changing the pitch, which is squeezing these frequencies closer or spreading them out further apart, or if you're changing time or anything like that, you're actually separating those points from each other. You're doing the more audible that you're going to hear. What is supposed to be a nice, smooth, like parabola, ends up becoming square, which it starts making corners and stuff because you're just trying to connect the dots together. That square wave is basically your like classic Nintendo sound, which inherently becomes the robotic Melodyne sound, or the Melodyne or the robotic auto tune sort of sound to it. That's essentially what's happening. So with bit depth and resolution, you typically are looking like higher resolution for classical music because they're trying to get like that vinyl sort of sound. Same thing with jazz. Bit depth also inherently controls the amount of dynamic range that you have. So I think it's something, let me look back here. Yeah, 96 decibels of dynamic range, which is already decibels of dynamic range. At about one decibel sound pressure level, at about 96 is per. I think there's any music out there that's really using all 96 dB of dynamic range. That's kind of nuts. 100, with a higher. So with classical jazz and choral music, you typically want all of those dynamics. With like rock or metal music or modern day like rap and hip hop stuff, that music is so compressed that there's not really dynamic range in there. So you don't really need to have a higher resolution for recording. If you use the wrong settings, there's nothing that really happens, just that your files are bigger. What's more important, resolution or bit depth? Honestly, I would rather have a higher bit depth than resolution. Just because at this point, it's the way people are listening to music, like they're listening to it off their phones, they're listening to it off of earbuds, and not really listening to it on a hi-fi system, but people are still going to notice that dynamic range. So having the higher bit depth while having the lower resolution is usually the more ideal way to go. So next we're going to talk about is what is the hierarchy of a great recording. So basically this is what will alter your recording in the greatest amount. So number one, if you change the musician or if you change the instrument, that entirely changes your recording, right? So if you give a great musician a junky instrument, they will probably still have a decent performance, but it's still going to be like, oh, if someone's playing on a Hello Kitty guitar, it's not going to sound as good as if they were playing on a regular guitar. But if you give a good musician and a good instrument, that's the number one thing that you can have for a great recording. Number two is going to be space. If you have a great musician with a great instrument in a closet, it'll still sound pretty good, but it'll still kind of sound a little muffly. If you put that person in a concert hall or in a grand venue or just in a general recording studio that's just silent, you're going to have an awesome recording. After that is the microphones and like the hardware. So the microphones, the mic preamps, which is actually what's powering the microphones, or like your overall recording system, that falls after. And lastly is actually the engineer. If you have great musicians in a great recording studio with a great selection of microphones and all the microphone preamps and compressors and stuff in the world, and you throw some high school graduate in that session, chances are that recording session's still going to sound pretty good. Honestly, the chances of that not turning out right is probably pretty low. So that's kind of the nice thing about being on the recording engineer side, is that if you have access to all of these things, the choices that you make is what's going to separate you from like an amateur recording to like a professional recording. But if you can control all of these different things, if you can rent out the recording space, if you can have the microphones and you have a recording system ready, I mean, most people can come out with a really great product. So this is kind of what I was talking about. Like, they're microphones, they're not magic wands. A great musician with a shitty mic will still be a freaking great recording. An amazing microphone in front of a shitty musician will be like a high fidelity turd. Like, it's, if you put some children's choir and you throw on like, $10,000 microphones in front of them, it's just going to be a high fidelity recording of a children's choir. They might be good, they might be bad, but it's not going to make them sound like the Vocal Majority or the Mormon Tabernacle Choir or anything like that. There's different types of microphones. There's the first kind, which is called a ribbon, which is was basically designed to not have that rear lobe. So basically, when you're speaking into it, if you spoke on the backside of it, it would also work. So the dynamic microphones were designed to only pick up from the front side. So when they created that, they were able to get a higher sound pressure level because the ribbon wouldn't blow out. You were able to kind of experiment more with like colors and wiring. The microphones overall were smaller. Dynamic microphones are typically meant for loud sources of sound. That would be like your trombones, or just your general brass section, electric guitar amplifiers, kick drums, just things that are just massive moving amount of air. People use them for live vocals, but for the recording aspect, it's probably not used too often unless it's like a requested choice by the singer. And lastly, we have condenser microphones. Condenser microphones are like high fidelity capturing. They're way more sensitive. They use something called phantom power, which is used to power up the microphones. Um, they're a lot more sensitive to all the frequencies around them. They're usually meant for high harmonic detail capture. So your acoustic guitars, your pianos, your choirs, quartets, obviously, and this is what we're going to be talking about mostly. Condenser microphones are going to capture all the harmonics of the voice, the overtones, the potential undertones that could happen. Um, so the musicians are like the color, and then the microphones are like the medium that you're using. So yeah, it's like, do I want to go watercolor? Do I want to use pastels? Do I want to use clay? Like, what am I kind of working with here? There's a pairing that happens with microphones, and I'll tell a quick story that I was working in a classical session with a Chinese opera singer, and we set up the session, everything was going great, and she would sing, and she was like, "Oh no, I just sound sick." And she like was kind of coming back from a thing. I think she had like allergies or something that was bothering her. And so we tried a couple different things. She tried changing her technique, and she was just like, "No, like I don't know what it is." Like her English wasn't 100% there where we were exactly on the same page. I swapped out the microphones, and that's all it was. And it was literally like a 2 decibel bump at like 500 hertz, or like this particular range that pushed out the mid-range of her voice that made her sound a little congested. And yes, that is something that I could have EQ'd out, but if you fix it at the source, that's what happens. So pairing microphones, you typically want the opposite of what the musician is or what the instrument is. So if you have a bright violin, you don't want to put a bright microphone on top of it, because that will bring out way more harmonics than you want to, and it'll usually sound unpleasant. So ribbons are typically really dark microphones. You put them on brass because they're so mid-rangey and high frequency stuff that by the time that those harmonics are captured, that the ribbon has darkened and warmed it up to the point where it sounds great. So you change the musician, you change the instrument, those are going to have your biggest impact. You change your microphone, it's still going to be the same great performance, but you might notice more bumps and colors and stuff that are changing. And those little minor movements can really help the session, because it's less work that you have to do in post-production. Right now, I am talking pretty quickly and stuff. If you guys have any questions, if you want me to go back over anything, just put something in the chat. My buddy James Pennington's actually going to be looking at the chat and keeping in touch with that stuff. In case anyone has any questions, they can just, James, whenever you want, you can just unmute your mic and then just read it out to me in case you see something. Okay, the recording engineer's role. What's the recording engineer do? You hit record. It doesn't always happen. Mistakes happen. You're the therapist, you're the firefighter, you're the documenter, you're the mechanic, you're the cable wrapper. Therapist, you're there in a vulnerable state of the musician. A musician comes to the recording studio and they have this art, this piece, this product that they've spent months or years working on, and now they're coming to you and they're performing it in front of you, and they're capturing it and documenting it for all time. That's a big deal. That's so huge. And the recording engineer just has to be, you have to be kind, you have to be open-hearted, you have to let these people come in. Things happen in a session where a microphone's not recording, something happens, something knocks over, whatever. You have to be able to think on your feet and be quick. The less time that it takes for you to fix something, the faster you can get back to recording, the faster you're able to record more musicians, the more time you have for the session. And the musicians will notice if it feels like you're wasting time or like if you're not quick enough. So definitely it's a fast-paced world of be quick, but don't seem to rushing where like it translates to the musician. It has to be a calm, but fast and efficient. Documenter, I mean, as a recording engineer, you're only documenting what happens in that room, whether it's just the drums, whether it's the whole ensemble. Your job is to make sure that that moment in history and in time of this earth is captured. The mechanic, if things break, you have to be able to sort of fix them on your own. If there's a cable issue that you're able to swap it out and fix it, you have to have tools on you in case a mic clip isn't fitting right, or you accidentally forget your mic clip, and then you have gaff tape on you, so you can sort of use a bigger clip or something like that and tape around the microphone to make sure it works. And obviously cable wrapping, that's like 90% of the job. You're just wrapping cables all the time. What isn't a recording engineer? A connection maker, or like someone that says, hey, like this. You never, ever, 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 ever want to tell a musician that has just paid you a ton of money in studio time to be like, hey, I know that you think you have your own sound, but you sort of sound like Bob Dylan. Like, no, that's not good. Because what if that musician hates Bob Dylan? You never know that. And that's something that's really important is recording engineers, as like open-hearted as you have to be shutting yourself off from everyone else. If you're curious about it, you can ask them what their influences are. So like, let's say you listen to it, sounds like Bob Dylan, and you'd be like, wow, that sounds great, man. Hey, like, who were your influences growing up? Or like, who inspires you? And they're like, well, honestly, like, yeah, I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. And you're like, great. Yeah. Cause I was going to say this has a huge Bob Dylan fan or Bob Dylan sound to it, going on from that point. So you'd never want to make those assumptions and potentially offend somebody, because it can really mess up your session. You're not a producer. A producer is basically, in like what I would allude to the barbershop world, would be like the arranger. The producer will make calls of what instruments should be in the song, what instrumentation could be used, changing chord structure, any of that sort of stuff. That's a producer's call. A recording engineer is not that. A recording engineer should never look at their musician and be like, hey, you should change this chord because I don't think it fits right. No, that's not your job. Your job is to hit record and to make sure that everything gets captured. The producer is a producer because that's their job. You're not a liar. You don't want to tell the musician, hey, that was a great take, and it wasn't. And they think they felt good about it. And then you move on, and then you get to the mixing, and then you give them back their mixes, and they're like, this sounds like trash. What happened? Like, you told me this was good. Not a good look. You have to be straight, but you have to be kind about it. Be like, usually what I say is, hey, how did you feel about that? And they'll usually say, it felt fine. I felt like a thing in my throat. You're like, great, let's do another take. That's all it is. Just move on. Like, don't even stress about it. Just keep the session moving. Don't be stubborn, because a musician might have a particular microphone that they want to use, or they might have a certain space they want to use. Obviously, if you have a background as to what will work, say that. Be like, hey, if we record in the stairwell, it's by the highway. So yes, we can get that stairwell sound, but that highway is going to come through the recording. Is that okay? What you don't want to be is like, no, that's not going to work. No. Never say no. Always kind of be like a sure, but that's kind of the approach there. Next step, the mixing engineer. What is a mixing engineer? You're the organizer, you're the life giver, you're the translator, you're the delegator. You're organizing all the sessions. Sometimes you have a bunch of files, sometimes you don't have that many files. You have the power to make music come alive more than what the recording engineer was giving you. If a really good recording engineer will capture all of that dynamic range, it's up to you to how do I explain it? Like, to magnify it, because this is something that people are going to be listening to in the car, on the subway, on a hi-fi system, when they're working out. They want to hear all of those minor details at any sort of volume. The translator, this is a unique one. If an artist comes in and they're like, hey, this is a song that we have, it's a 1942's propaganda barbershop tune, I want it to sound like that. Well, when I receive that information, I say, great, I have to translate what has been recorded in 2020 on a high fidelity recording microphone system and make it sound like it's from, what is it, 80 years ago? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that sounds close. So what you have to do is be able to take that information and apply it to the mix. The delegator, you have to be able to, this is sort of like assigning roles. What you're doing is finding the melody, finding the focus. Who is the focus? Who is the important part of this song? I have to make them the focus. I have to make sure that these guys are out of the way, so that way all of that stuff is being heard. Because the last thing you want to do is have a great recording, hit it the mix engineer, and you can't understand the words. You don't want that. You don't want it to be where there's a great guitar solo and all you hear is drums. The delegator, assigning who the focus is. What isn't a mixing engineer? Again, we're not producers. Producers is its own job. It's its own role. They get paid money to do what they're supposed to. A mixing engineer is just kind of gluing everything together and making it presentable. They're not part of the band. You shouldn't be playing your part. You shouldn't be harmonizing during the recording. You shouldn't be offering, hey, I can play a great guitar solo over this. No, they hired you to mix their song. They didn't hire you to be part of the band. One trick pony. This is actually something that's really important. I'm going to show you guys a lot of tips and tricks and techniques and stuff, but you can't just rely on these things. You have to be able to kind of, unknot yourself and find your ways to be able to get out of something. That if you have a trick to do something, that you have to know 4 other ways to do it too. How can I make this track brighter? Yes, you can boost the highs, or maybe you can take some of the mids and some of the lows out, so that way those high frequencies stick out more. There's another trick. Or maybe what you can do is get rid of some of the low frequencies by high passing it, so now you're only getting the high frequencies coming out. You have to know how to achieve the same thing 3 or 4 different ways. Lastly, you can't be deaf. Protect your hearing. Protect your hearing. Protect your hearing. If you're going to bars, not now, but if you're going to bars, if you're on the train, if you're on an airplane, if you're someplace that's loud, busy streets, car horns, whatever, earplugs. Just save your hearing. Our ears are the industry. This is what we need to be able to work. I take extreme precautions on my ears. I get my hearing tested like once a year. I have earplugs tied to my keychain or onto my keys, so if I'm anywhere, I know exactly that I'm going to be safe no matter what happens. And you never know. You go to a concert and it's way too loud. I wish I had earplugs. I will always have my keys on me. Or if I'm at a bar and like the DJ is just cranking it, great, I have them on me. Those are all things that you should think about if you're trying to make this a full-time thing. Also, what's important is getting your hearing tested, knowing if you have any notches in your hearing. Maybe you have a 6 dB notch in at 2 kilohertz. Well, now when you're mixing that you can have someone else listen to that and be like, hey, does 2 kilohertz sound okay? Or you could use, frequency charts or whatever, but at least like, hey, this is a spot that if I keep boosting this to where it sounds good to my ears, guess what? It's not translating. Everyone else is hearing this, with better hearing that this is going to be obstructive to them. Great. So now that we're all on the same page of what audio is, I will give you guys a couple minutes to kind of digest that. And let me drink this tea and then we'll hop right in. All right. So this is a 1942 World War II propaganda chart that we have here called Obey Your Air Raid Warden. Right now, you're going to see all these different edits here. My assistant engineer, James Pennington, sent me all the tracks and sent me all the edits that I need to make on this track. So what we have here is the voiceover. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let us listen to it all the way through. And then that way we can kind of know what we're working with here. So let me turn off the plugin so we can hear everything exactly the way I received it.
The U.S. Office of Civilian Defense was established in 1941 to prepare for possible air raids on the United States during World War II. Blackout drills were commonplace, during which neighborhoods across the country would practice going completely dark. The prevailing thought was that enemy planes couldn't target what they couldn't see. About 6 million American civilians volunteered as air raid wardens to ensure their neighbors knew what to do in drills, and if it ever came to it, could respond appropriately during an attack. This is a silly song about that.
Dum 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 ba ba dum 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 ba ba dum dum
Be calm.
dum
2.
dum
Get under shelter.
dum
3.
dum
Don't run.
dum
Obey your air raid warden.
ba dum dum
4.
dum dum
Stay home.
dum ba dum
5.
ba dum
Keep off the highway.
ba dum
6.
dum
Don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen, 7. Don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. Ba, ba-da, 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 da, ba-da, da, ya, do, 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 ba-da, da, 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 ba, da, 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 ba, da, 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 da. For information, most of all, obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
Wow, what a chart. Wow. What an absolute banger. So that was arranged by James Pennington, also my assistant engineer here. He kind of took it
You
upon
need
his
coffee
own.
or anything while now that I have your title as assistant?
Yes,
Let me
that's
know.
it. Please get me coffee. So what do we need to do? We need to set the stage here. So what I have is these 4 plugins here. Back then in the 1940s, we didn't have full frequency capture. We only had limited bandwidth that we could have. So let me show you what I'm dealing with here. So this is, hold on, let me hide the video here. What I'm going to show you is, this is the first filter that I have. So everything that's recording is going to come through this guy here. And I'll set this aside. Next is this lo-fi plugin. It does literally exactly what it's supposed to, of just making things lo-fi. 1 second. And then let me bypass this, or let me activate it. Next would be, let me set this right there. So that's making some noise. So here, let's actually listen to this, like in the middle section. I'll turn this off. This is just.
Couldn't see. About 6 million American civilians volunteered as air raid wolf.
Almost there. What we need to do is also make it grittier and noisier. So we add the lo-fi in.
About 6 million American civilians.
While that's good, it's still, there's a lot of like high fidelity like sizzle to it. So what do? I throw on this guy, which is hitting after the noise. And this is basically what you're seeing here is the only frequencies that are going to be coming out. So from 100 hertz up to like, I don't know, middle of 5K, was this supposed to 4.10? Now we have this.
About 6 million American civilians volunteered as
Now, since we've kind of carved out all of that sound, now what we have to do is, for this sort of thing, it'd probably be really compressed. There probably wouldn't be a whole lot of dynamic range. And overall, since we cut out all that frequency, now we have to make it louder. So now we have our last little bit here. It's a compressor. The best way to think about a compressor is when you're setting a certain threshold or where you want it to go, if music passes this particular level, whatever you make it, it becomes math. So I'll kind of explain it with a better visual compressor than what this is, but this is just going to make, this is going to limit the dynamic range that you have available, and then also have the makeup gain here to make it louder. I also have the analog 60 hertz feature, which is just going to add noise to it. Basically, anything that I can do to sort of set the stage for what the song is.
They couldn't see. About 6 million American civilians volunteered as air raid wardens to ensure
Their neighbors knew what to do in drills,
and if it ever came to it, could respond appropriately during an attack. This is a silly song about that.
Hey, Josh, just letting you know that we've had a request to maybe if you could turn up the music a little bit compared to your voice. I don't know how much control you have over that via Zoom, but yeah.
I can probably turn down my mic and comparatively to what the
That'd be great.
yeah.
They couldn't see.
How is this? Is this good? Is this a good balance? Let me know.
American civilians volunteered as air raid wardens to ensure their neighbors knew what to do in drills, and if it ever came to it, could respond appropriately during an attack. This is a silly song about that.
Okay, so great. So now we're making this, front and focus here. I can get rid of all these different plugins because I don't need to look at them right now. That's basically the only thing that I've done to this session. Next, I want to organize everything. So I have all these different edits here. Basically, what I want to do is just delete all this dead space that I have, and basically comp together these different takes. So what's great is I could just really take these and just, plop them down. Come on. And I can, comp my baritone track just like that. I don't necessarily need this anymore. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to do it, since I'm just gonna be doing boring editing stuff here.
So Josh, why are organizing these? Why is this a priority for you this early in the process to get all of these into?
Yeah. So
everything like
basically, since we have the quartet, right now we're looking at a whole bunch of different tracks and stuff here. What I want to do is the less clutter and finding that I have to do, the better. So what I want to do is basically make all these edits so that way I only have to look at the 6 tracks of the baritone, bass, lead, and tenor. So that way everything that I'm doing, it's applying it to all the different tracks. If I have all those, like the first track and the second, or the first take and the second take of baritone stuff, all the EQs and the compressors and everything, I'd have to double it. Since it's just a single voice, the best thing to do is just to comp everything. So that way I have a lot more flexibility in terms of editing that I have here.
Yep, got it. Some questions about, are you taking the best parts from different takes and editing them together? I guess I can answer that.
Yeah.
This is my quartet. And I think several of us, or maybe even all of us, might be on this call right now. So how we record this is, we are obviously all at home right now, and so we're doing all these takes were recorded each individually from the comforts of our own homes, and so we rather than since we're all recording at home and not able to sing as an ensemble, the way that we are tracking these is individually, and then sending our best takes over to Josh. And then what you see right now is Josh getting them all together, lined up to create a song.
Let's not delete that.
Please don't.
By the way, Matt, you're out. So there's just, a little housekeeping that I got to do here. And you're going to see that there is overlap and it looks like there's parts that are missing, but what I'll have to end up doing is going back through all of this stuff here and making sure that these edits aren't getting cut off. So I usually just start off with this guy. See, like I want to make sure these waveforms don't get cut off here. Everything looks, I'm just looking at the baritone line. I'm just going line by line here. This one looks like it has a little more ledge there. So I want to show you guys something cool here. Let me make these a little bit bigger. So Let's look at the baritone track. So if you zoom in far enough, you'll be able to see like these are all the little tiny plot points that are happening in a second. So that's all your bit depth that's having there. I think this was just recorded in 1644.1 because I don't think I had to change the resolution for the session. But yeah, that's, the cool thing about digital audio is you are able to magnify that far in and take a look at everything. One important thing to know about editing this sort of stuff is I don't typically want to delete the air between phrases and stuff. That usually helps make things sound more realistic. It's gonna be a tight edit. You're able to crossfade some of these sections just to kind of give them, to make sure they're not like stomping over each other. This is all the pre-production stuff you got to get done for recording. You don't want to have any of these words or breaths get cut off. Okay, it's there.
Hey, Josh, we have a question here from Lauren Shevitz. Invariably, with everyone recording at home, you'll have different levels. Any special challenging? Is it challenging to normalize all of the levels on our?
Not really. So that actually happened with the bass track here. So if you look, there's this little itty bitty little slider here that's a fader. I'm actually able to adjust all these. So if I show this to where I got it, yeah, here's the bass track. I'll even solo it. So something happened there when he was recording. A knob got turned and his gain level went drastically down. This clip gain is what it's called, allows me to adjust the volume or the gain level, gain being like how much signal is coming through, with an easy fader, and it just allows me to just instantly eyeball it and change the volume like that. So it's super easy to, if mistakes happened and something happened and the recording levels changed, to minimize all those variable differences. So usually they teach you not to mix with your eyes, but with this, I mean, you're able to see physically, change this. You can visually see that this is not the same level as this. And if I had it at 8.6 before, and it was just a generic of. So like that's probably like in the same ballpark of what we need to be. Let me go over here to Isley's. Yeah, there's just a little hangover there. Okay, lastly, tenor. Ooh, this is a tight one. Let's see. Let me make this so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay. This will be a tight edit, but I can make it work. The things that you're going to notice is like what I'm doing probably like in the end isn't necessarily hard, but it's having all the tools and knowing how to make these things work. So this is basically the amount of space that I have to make this edit here. We can crossfade this in here. I'm the strong believer with quartet music, as long as it's in the same pitch and intonation and tuning and key and all that stuff, you can make an edit. I can probably swing it more on this side. Yeah, see? There we go. And when you have the quartet in there, you're not even going to even notice that happens. So this is a crossfade, so it's blending the two ends of these takes together. And when I move those crossfades to the left, what you're seeing is that the crossfade's happening more on the ending of this take here than it is starting on this one, because we want that initial ooh, and Warden, you have that end to kind of to hide it or to mask it.
Josh, we have a question here from Ed Howard. For those of us not in Pro Tools, could you explain some of these tips in more generic terms that are a little bit more universal to other DAWs? Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, if anyone has any particular questions with Pro Tools, I would say that recording softwares are like driving different cars. They're all going to take you to the same place, but you ever like been in somebody's car and you like reach for the handle and you like don't know where it is because it's like 10 o'clock at night and you just are at the bars or whatever, and you're looking for the handle and you can't find it. There's a handle there. There's a handle there. But you just got to like find it. The same thing with the recording software. They're all going to have your EQs, your compressors, your ways to edit audio. They're all going to have areas where you're able to split up sections and change the signal that's coming through, but they just might call it something different. Pro Tools being the industry standard, clip gain is probably what they call it. People might call it region gain. They might not even call it anything, and it just might be like a little square that you're able to just drag up and then change the levels of it. I also work on PreSonus Studio One. I was working on that for like the last 7 months or so. And then I just got Pro Tools back maybe last month. So yeah, they're all doing the same thing, and they might be called different stuff, but they're going to have the EQs, the compressors, the way to edit the audios, the way to do crossfades. There was something in PreSonus Studio One that I didn't like, which James had sent me the files, and it sends it to you in a stereo format with the left and right. But these are just mono takes of like vocals, so I didn't need a stereo, and I didn't want to mix in stereo. I want to mix in mono because there's only one voice. So in Pro Tools, there's a thing where you can right click and it'll say, well, I don't have it here because I don't have a stereo track, but it'll say like split into mono. And I love that. And it just splits into mono, and there's a left track, a track that's just a left channel, a track that's just the right channel. And then I can just delete the excess and then mix it down the center. With PreSonus Studio One, you have to like go like dumpster diving for files and then find the original one and then right click it and then split into mono. Like, it was such a hassle, and it was something that I felt like it didn't make my editing experience faster, and it hindered me. And like, yes, it has the split to mono feature, but as to how masked they are, whatever they're going to call it, or finding them is always going to change. But for the most part, the terminology that I'm going to be using will probably be universal. And if they do have a different word, it's because that software decided to use that. But for the most part, like clip gain or region gain or anything like that, compressors, all the settings that I'm talking about are all probably going to be pretty universal. Okay, and I think that's the last one there. Great. Okay, so now we have our tracks here. I'm going to delete this dead space. Now we have our entire quartet selection here. You have the option of consolidating all of these into one file. I don't like to do that until I don't ever really like to do that because I never know when an edit's going to be made. The last song that I did for Secret Best Friends was, there were a ton of different edits that were happening all over the place. And day to day, I would get, oh, by the way, Matt sent me this different take of this tag. Okay, well, he sent me this. And it's like, well, I don't want to get confused as to what take I'm on. So I usually like to leave everything the way that I receive it here with all the lines and stuff. It doesn't bother me. You're not going to hear it. So now we get started. So the first thing we want to do is we're looking at our mixing section here, and I can shrink this off to maximize my space here. Drag this down. So the first thing I want to do is organize everything. I think Command G, yes, okay. So there's a lot of like vocals against the harmonizer section, and I know eventually I will want to do this, but I'm probably not going to use it right away. Is I'm going to select the baritone, the bass, and the tenor section. I'm going to make a group, and I'm going to call this back harmony. And it's going to be all my mixing and editing, but for this part, I think I really only want this for mixing. What this allows me to do is, if I have these tracks selected here and I have we can see down here, the back and harmony group, if I move this baritone track here, it's going to move the bass and the tenor track as well. That allows me to, if I end up finding, let me deactivate it now. If I move the baritone here, and this is what the bass is, and then the tenor is supposed to be here, if I activate this back again, it'll keep that ratio of what that mix is. So that's really helpful for me to make those moves when I find them, to basically have the same ratio, not having to move my faders one by one. So find whatever DAW you use, find how you can group your tracks together. Some of them are easier. We can just click it. Pro Tools is a little more difficult on it. You have to make the group for it and then do it that way. Because if I select the baritone, the bass, and the tenor track, and I move these, it only affects the one that I'm clicking. That's just something that's unique to Pro Tools. Okay, so we listened to the track. Let's get zoomed in here. Track starts right here.
Dum 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 ba ba dum 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 ba ba dum dum
Be calm.
dum
2.
dum
Get under shelter.
dum
3.
dum
Don't run.
dum
Obey your air raid warden.
ba dum dum
4.
dum.
Okay, so before I start mixing all this stuff, I like to start building my sound. If you guys are wearing headphones, you're going to hear the actual panning. If you're listening to it off your phone, you're just going to hear mono. So I have my baritone track here, and I've actually had this conversation with James Pennington before of how do you guys stand? And he's like, I don't know. We haven't really performed long enough to give me that answer. So James, where would you like to be panned, left or the right?
I don't know. I've probably, and other guys in the quartet can help me out with this. I think probably on the right.
So when I'm listening to you, you're going to be on my right-hand side?
I would be on like the stage left side.
Okay. So then at this point, what I would do is I like to organize this in the way that I'm looking at the quartet. So I have my tenor on my left, my lead and bass. I want to keep those guys in the center. They're the main focus. So talking about like delegating and making sure the roles are, the closer to the center, the more focus that item is, or that sound is. If you have things off to the left, it's an accent. So the closer you are to the center, the more focused you're supposed to be. So having the lead and the bass has to be always center. That's something that I've kind of started realizing more, where I was using a particular technique that would mimic the way the human ears would capture sound, but you sort of created this false this false center of what you're actually hearing. And then I switched over to a different technique that had a stronger center balance, and I felt like that made a way better recording. These pan numbers are completely arbitrary. I don't know. I mean, I put these off where I know they're going to be off to the side, and then I just kind of use my ears and see what feels too far and what feels just right. And for the sake of not hearing the siren, I'm just going to mute it for now.
Dum 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 ba ba dum 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 ba ba dum dum
Be calm.
dum
2.
dum
Get under shelter.
dum
3.
dum
Don't run.
dum
Obey your air raid warden.
ba dum dum
4.
dum
Stay home.
dum ba dum
5.
ba dum
Keep off the highway.
ba dum
6.
dum
Don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, 7, don't smoke.
Okay. So I'm very grateful and blessed to have been living close to the Northbrook area, where I've been able to work with J.G. Lombardo, Dan Wessler, Kevin Keller, these great Midwest coaches, even guys like Royce Ferguson or Brandon Guyton, that I'm able to sort of receive this sort of coaching in a chorus setting and in a quartet setting, where all of those things that I learned in the coaching setting applies to this. So what do we have? We have this walking bass line. And what Dan Wester calls is like the basses just have to be this concrete slab that everyone else can dance on. And that's exactly what's happening here. So if we listen to this middle section.
Five, keep off the highway.
So if I mute the bass.
Don't phone, obey your air raid warden. Now there are rules that you should know.
And if we have the bass, he has his own melody that he's doing. So what do I have to do to make him the concrete slab? I have to make sure that dynamically he's not moving. I have to make sure that he's present in all frequencies of his voice. I actually have the power to help him out on some of these lower notes where it may sound like he's reaching. Like right there, like I think it was this one. No, it was, where was it? I think it's. Yeah, you can see right here. Look at how physically smaller this low note is. And theoretically, I could just do this to boost it up. What's going on, James?
Oh, I was just going to say this is something that's unique to recording as opposed to performing in person, where if it's a note that's in one part of your range or another, where you might, lean into the microphone a little bit or step back a little bit. That's something that is, that's not part of the process for us as performers when we're recording. So this is cool to see that this is how you achieve a similar effect in this medium instead of in live performance.
Right, because probably what would happen on the stage is that Will would be pretty close to the mic, or maybe he'd have his own mic, and then you guys would be off doing your own thing. But these notes where he's hitting a little low, I clipped this one section all together on its own, and I just raised it. I have no idea what this will sound like. Let me see, because we have to worry about is when I'm doing things like this, whatever the noise that I had or that was recorded on this, that is also being magnified. So you have to be careful with, doing clip gain and trying to record this as cleanly as possible the first time. Is that if you do increase the section, you might hear, and then like they might have that noise difference, and that's something that we can fix, but it just ends up becoming more mangling. So let's hear this section. So maybe a little too much, but at least it's there. I can probably bring this down too crazy in terms of the volume mismatch or anything like that.
Don't phone, pay your air raid warden.
Yeah, so there's these little sections here. So if I add compression, which I'll use a compressor that will make more sense. Let me think. The Renaissance compressor. Yeah. So this is the easiest way, I think, to allow. 1 second, actually. Okay, good. So I have this threshold here. What this basically is telling me where do I want the compressor to start activating. So let's listen to over here. So without anything, this is kind of where he's just sort of sitting. If I wanted more compression, I could lower this to like here. So now anytime something crosses this threshold, whatever ratio I set it will allow the compression to happen. So basically it's just math. For every let's say a 3-to-1. So for every 3 decibels that comes across this point, 1 dB of sound will come through. And since I lose that signal, I have my makeup gain here to boost it up to make sure that everything ends up being level again. I probably don't want to do too much. I might just do like a 2-to-1, or actually it probably makes sense to do like 4-to-1 here. so here we have a little bit of a breath. I might do this just to kind of get rid of that audible sound there.
Don't phone, pay your air raid warden. Ba-dum, da ba da da oh, stop, look and listen, ba-dum, mate number 8, kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the fore now.
So yeah, we have a little bit of a cutoff here. Personally, I'm not liking the way this compressor is sounding. So real quick, so what I'm doing is, since I'm limiting that dynamic range there, if people ask like, what do you like to do, compressed in EQ or, sorry, I'm trying to find you guys here. Do I want to compress and then EQ, or do I want to EQ and then compress? I prefer to compress the signal first and then the EQ stuff afterwards. You can definitely do the opposite, which is to EQ first and then compress it. But any addition or subtraction that you're doing in the EQ section and then you're compressing that signal, if you've made boosts and you compress it, you're also compressing that boost. So if you add that compressor initially, limit the dynamic range, then all EQ stuff you do afterwards is typically a little bit more flexible. Because if I do any boosts and then it hits the compressor, then I'm not hearing that boost that I just did. Let me set this back here.
Josh, we've had a question about what's your primary aim of compressing the bass here?
I want to make this the concrete slab that he's not going to have too much dynamic range, and that's okay. What we want to do is have that beat that goes along with it. I don't want to hear the compressor. I just want to fill the space and have him be consistent in all parts of his range. So if I limit the dynamic range, it brings the low volume parts closer to his loud volume parts. So then this starts getting closer together, where we're able to build that consistency.
Don't phone, pay your air raid warden.
Yeah. Okay, so now I have this part here. So now he'll be a nice concrete slab for all of us to dance on.
Get under shelter. Breathe. Don't run. Obey your air raid warden. 4. Stay home. 5. Keep off the highway. 6. Don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do,
Yeah.
where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop.
So like, let's listen to that section again without the compression.
Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do.
Like, yes, he's there, he's present, but when we add this compressor in,
Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop.
I didn't have to EQ anything. That's something that like you might have listened to. You're like, I think I need to EQ it. It needs to sound more full. Like, no, he just needs to just be consistent in all parts of his vocal register here that we have. And now I'm pretty happy with how that's kind of coming out there. At this point, then we can start looking at balance. Okay, so we have our focus here of...
Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do.
At this point, I would think of like the bass as like a kick drum and like the lead as like the snare. I want to make sure these guys are like at the same volume, where not necessarily one is dominating the other. This kind of goes back to like regular barbershop coaching of like having your melody and then your lead. I think that's Kevin Keller's kind of approach to that.
Obey your air raid warden. Now there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the floor now.
Let me see something here.
When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the floor now.
Okay, so now we kind of have some sort of semblance of where we want to have that section there, and just like duetting, let's listen to bass and baritone. Yeah,
Josh, I'm glad that we gave you a song for that has for this barbershop mixing masterclass that has very little, if anything at all, to do with barbershop.
Right? Yeah.
When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. Don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the floor now.
Yeah, nice and hot. So
Air raid warden. To the floor now.
I need to have it where it's still exciting. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with that bass and baritone there. Make sure that my lead and bass are going to be matching here.
Most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the floor now.
And then just kind of go through all my different harmonies here.
Okay, of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. Ba ba da ba da ba da ya do ba da ba da da da.
Matt's insane.
We love you, man.
Last thing I want to do is just make sure that the balance between tenor and lead. Oops. This one.
Please obey your air raid warden. Ba da ba da ba da da ba da da ya do ba da da ba da da ba da 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 ba da 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 ba
So that's a cool little scat section. There's something that we can do called automation. Basically, that allows me to make volume adjustments for particular regions as opposed to the overall mix. I would like to find sections that have like the 4-part harmony where everyone's kind of singing like
When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, 7, don't smoke.
So let's go back to this back harmony part. I like this, but I think just the overall harmony parts might be a tad loud.
When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, 7, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties more.
Something to note when I was talking about focus of things in the center versus thing on the outside, the further you push things on the outside, the louder they become because they're not being clouded in the center. So right now, like I'm noticing that even though I brought down Matt, it still feels loud, but that's just because my left ear is just picking him up more. He also, frequency speaking, you're going to notice that part more. And here, I'll even do this. So if you guys look at my screen here, I have the ear here. So this is called the pinna. And there's a part right here. This is the concha. The pinna picks up frequencies of 1 to 3 kilohertz. The concha here picks up from 5 to 7. So this is the speech, and then this is the sibilants. So these are all the aural parts that you have of your ear. So if you actually touch your pinna, you're going to notice that your hearing slightly changes. And if you put your finger on just the inside, like just that little bed, like before your ear canal opens up, you're going to notice a slightly different sound to your hearing. This allows you to kind of know that if something happens to your ear, if you have weird collagen or whatever, anything that affects this hearing part will change how you're hearing things. So now that we know that, higher frequencies are just naturally going to be more sensitive to what we're able to hear. So Matt being on the higher register, he is able to be perceived louder just by pure audiology.
I should say here, Josh, that this is a section where this is actually a tenor melody section.
Great. See, this is good things to know when you're working with the quartet. So you don't like something and get stuck on like, oh, like this should be, you know, a 4-part harmony section breakdown. But like, no, it's a tenor melody. Great, good to know.
And I'll tell you when the tenor picks up on the melody. It's after the unison.
Look and listen, 7, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties most of all.
Yeah, it's
obey your air raid warden.
So like this little section here, I have my little my flags here to let me know that this section is going to be basically where the tenor needs to come out predominantly.
Yeah, it's roughly around there. I could watch the clock and give you timestamps if you would want that.
You hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, 7, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties most of all, please obey your air raid warden.
Okay, so now that we have done this, what I like to do from here is I find everything has a nice healthy balance to it. Since everyone's recording at home and recording on different microphones, it's better to record on different microphones. And the reason why, here, let me see if I can share this real quick. So these are called frequency response charts. What this is showing me is when you're pumping 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz through this microphone, this is how the microphone is responding. Now, this is the 2035, which is the microphone that James Pennington's recording on.
Yep.
And you're going to notice that.
And I think our lead and bass as well, James and Will Daniel. I think 3 of us are on the same microphone.
Oh, okay. So that's extremely good to know. So all these bumps and stuff that we have here, especially this hill that starts at 3K and it goes up 5, 6 dB at 6 kilohertz, and then kind of Super Mario rolls on its way down. Since we have those voices, all this area is going to come off really, really bright in our mix, because not only is everyone recording through the exact same microphone, but just at home and stuff in different environments, all their voices are going to be accentuating this particular frequency. So it's good to know that when I'm fixing things, that I'm going to be looking at like the 3 to 12 kilohertz spot here, because that will inherently be an excess buildup that's there. So so I think Matt's on a Rode NT1, right? Matt, if you're in here, you can chime in if you're on an NT1.
That is true.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, so he's got his own mics set up here. Whoops, frequency response chart. I don't believe this, that it's this flat. I just think that that's a lie. Might be the anniversary edition. Yeah, this looks more of like what I would expect from an NT1. The NT1's like a $250 microphone, and the fact that it would be as flat as a $20,000 mic, I don't believe it. This probably looks more right with all the hills and valleys and stuff. So again, another bump here, like in that 3 to 6K range, and then again at like 12. So a lot of these bumps are going to alter how we hear things. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is it's called multi-band compression. What that basically is with, well, Daniel on the compression here, it's compressing everything, all the frequencies, anything. As soon as that volume gets past that certain threshold, guess what? It's getting compressed. What I have here is called C6 from Waves. And what we're going to see here is basically I have these different frequencies that I'm able to compress and bands that I'm able to compress. So I'm not compressing everything. I'm just sort of, this is more of like the surgical work to make things better. And I think, was it Kyle that asked a question about like how to make things better depending on like different recordings? This is absolutely it. This is basically what I can do to sort of make sure that we don't have a buildup of something if there's a particular frequency that that's having too much sound in there. So let's listen to just Isley here.
Who and where to go when you hear the sirens blow. Stop, look, and listen.
So now I'm listening to just this area. If I wanted to compress it, same thing. Set the threshold, tell it how much I want it to dip down, and then I have adjustable gain here back and forth. I also have attack, which is how fast and slow I want it to respond. So typically what I do is I grab this frequency band and I just kind of cycle back and forth from 16 to 16, 16 hertz to 16 kilohertz. And I'm going to be looking at this spot here to see what spot is the loudest, and that's going to be the area that has too much buildup. And from there, I kind of take back and kind of go from there. You can hear all that sibilance coming through. That's just from the mic. Yeah, so here's gonna be the loudest. And I'll be honest, this is really high-end hearing listening stuff. We're like, I'm taking 2 decibels away from a particular frequency at 600 bands at an arbitrary distance amount. So this is basically just going to be what I'm using to make it sound more even so that I'm not hearing those bumps of the microphone.
There are rules that you should know, what to do and where to go.
See, it just smooths it out a little bit. It doesn't have that mid-range sort of push, that like nose to it.
There are rules that you should know. There are rules that you should know, what to do.
And it's subtle, but it's stuff that helps build this character. So when I am EQing to get the last final colors of it, that's everything's gonna be nice and even, and I'm not accentuating or boosting or taking away from something that I could have just compressed it. The cool thing about compression as opposed to the EQ for this sort of stuff is that it's only when it passes this arbitrary threshold. If I'm EQing something, it's applying it to it the entire track the entire time. So this is kind of cool that I like the way everything comes to come across, but if there's ever a buildup and it's too much, I'm able to take away from it.
There are rules that you should know, what to do and where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7, don't smoke, don't smoke. 8, help all the kitties, kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden. Bop.
Okay, and then just going to go to the baritone next.
Josh, we had a question from Kyle. For vocals, do you prefer multi-band compression and or dynamic EQ over static EQ choices?
It's just it's tools in your belt. It's colors in your palette. I don't prefer one or the other. I like having the multi-band compression. I think it's very, very, very useful. I use C6 on every session that I use, or that I'm on, and so I like EQ. I try not to use it as much because it can get phasey and it can sound weird. But I like this because it just the way everyone's recording at home right now. It just kind of helps me balance out the microphones that are more consumer level as opposed to professional level. For me, microphones are, in a professional recording setting, if you're using something for vocals, you should be using at least like a $500 microphone minimum. But obviously there are people out there that are able to make great products using a $100 mic, but there are a lot of things that happen with products that are built in China using cheaper parts, cheaper capsules, that sort of stuff. This just kind of helps me fix it. I probably wouldn't use this as much if I had like high-end microphones. I might be working more with like just EQs and dynamic EQs. So now we're working on baritone part.
There are rules that you should know.
Oops. Yeah, so I got to turn off the back harmony here.
Stop, look, and listen, listen. 7, don't smoke, don't smoke. 8, help all the kitties, kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden. Bop, ba-da.
Yeah, there's just a lot of cloud here in this 530 part of his voice. And it's, again, it goes down to pairing. So, when we're using relatively budget microphones and people's voices, like having that initial pairing, I probably wouldn't have to do as much multi-band compression. But this is probably the way that most folks are handling multi-microphone barbershop recordings. I use this a lot with my stereo microphone technique as well, because there are just things that happen with stereo miking that if you're able to multi-band compress everything, it helps smooth everything out and give you a more pleasurable listening experience. Yeah, so this is just like mud that we can just get rid of.
Please get rid of my mud.
Most of all, please obey your air raid warden. Bop, ba-da, 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 da, ba-da, da, ya, do, ba-da, da, ba-da.
So we are hearing a little bit of that room noise of the back. I'm not worried about it because by the time we have reverb and everything, you're probably not going to hear it too much. But I think that's smoothed everything out there. With Will Daniel, let me see if I want to. I'll check the C6, but I may not commit to this.
And listen, dum 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 ba dum dum.
Yeah, just there. And you have to be careful with compression and certain frequency ranges because you can lose the articulation. And I don't want to do that because there's a lot of dots in this tune. Yeah, that might be too much for me. Yeah.
Obey your air raid warden.
Great. And then I'll just listen to tenor. I think this was fine.
Listen, seven, don't smoke, don't smoke.
The thing that I've been doing recently with tenors is so we have our frequency range here. Everyone's kind of building up to a certain spot. Everyone kind of occupies a certain spot in the frequency range. And what I try to do is not add weight when I'm adding the tenor track in. So usually I just roll off an arbitrary amount of low frequency here. So at 102 hertz.
Listen, seven, don't smoke it. Above the kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now.
For information, most of all, obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic,
Okay, so then we get to the unisons there.
hear the sirens blow. Stop, look, and listen, listen, seven. Don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all. Please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now.
Next thing I want to do is there's something called an aux input. This is basically grouping everything together where if I want to apply EQ or compression to the overall quartet sound, I'm able to do that. And I'm going to create two of these. I'm going to call this first one submix. I'm going to call this one reverb. So what I have here is I'm going to make sure that all of these guys here are going to go to my first 1 and 2. Great. Submix, I want to make sure that this is all sending to channels 1 and 2. So this is sending, each track is going to go out to bus 1 and 2. Bus 1 and 2 is going to receive that information and then send it out to our final mix here. So now when I listen to this,
Hear the sirens blow. Stop.
I have something here that if I want to EQ everything, let's say, you know, I wanted to make this that radio sound and I wanted to apply it to the entire quartet. Instead of applying the EQ 6 different times or 4 different times here for the quartet, I can do that. Not going to because that's not what I'm trying to show here. What I am trying to show is on this stuff over here, the submix, what I'm going to have this do is send out to bus 3 and 4. Make sure I'm sending a full signal there. Now 3 and 4 is going to be my reverb channel here. So now everything that's coming in everything is leaving out of 1 and 2. It's going to come into here. This is sending a copied signal in my sense queue to my reverb. And so now if I add my my reverb here, I like using IR1 full. And lately I've been jamming with stairwells, skyscraper stairwell, impulse response. So this is a really cool technology called impulse response. What this basically does is someone goes out into a certain space, has a microphone, makes a clap or some sort of a noise that occupies all the space, maybe even a sine sweep of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. They have a microphone and they record it. Then from there, they're able to create an algorithm that shows how every frequency responds with that space and in that microphone and create you a digital room. So as opposed to just making a reverb, this is a particular skyscraper stairwell. So hallways, concert halls. If I wanted to do this in the Rome Santa Cecilia, I have that option here, and I can use this and have it in my recording. I like the stairwell. I think it sounds the most barbershoppy, to be perfectly honest. The only thing is I want to change is with reverb, you want to make sure that the decay is at the same tempo of the song. So you can change it by how much you're mixing it or how long the reverb is. But you have that there. And I'm going to move this here, and I'm going to explain why I'm going to do that later. So then I'll leave this there. And so now we're going to hear just a little bit of this section. So a lot of reverb that's probably way too long. 2.6 seconds. Those are rookie numbers. We got to bring those numbers down.
Hear the silence flow, stop, look, and listen, listen, seven. Don't smoke me. Come on, the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
So the thing that I want to check is, let me see. I always forget how to do this. I know there's a way that I can hear just my reverb.
Silence flow, stop, look, and listen. And don't smoke it. Come on, the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
So I like that stairwell reverb. The thing is, when you record all of those frequencies and stuff and using your microphones, you're still getting those bumps and dips and stuff of that sound. I always EQ my reverb, and what I try and do is make it sound as dark as possible, because I think that when we're listening to something, we don't really hear all of these high fidelity sounds. What we're hearing is just the sound of the space. So usually I just kind of dig around and kind of create and sculpt what my reverb is supposed to sound like.
Hear the silence flow, stop, look, and listen. And don't smoke it. Come on, the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
Yeah, and so here's you can kind of hear. I'll make this longer so we can kind of 1.3. Okay. We're hearing. There's a lot of like high frequency information there. If we EQ that reverb, eliminating those frequencies just makes it sound a little bit more natural. So let me bring this down to like 1.3. I think I had it at 1.5 is fine. Whatever.
Hear the silence flow, stop, look, and listen, seven. Don't smoke me. Come on, the kitties.
Okay, so now I kind of have that. Now we're hearing more of how this is going to sound as a final product. From here,
keep off the highway. Six, don't fall.
So now we have to hear all the different sections because there's a lot of like dooms and scatting and stuff that we need to make sure that the reverb doesn't sound so loud or it's distracting. Reverb is basically what's going to separate a professional recording from an amateur recording, and the quality of reverb.
Two, get under shelter. Three, don't run. Obey your air raid warden. 4, highway. 6. Don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7. Don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the fore now,
So now I'm noticing that I'm missing a little bit more of the body from Isley here. And so this is going to be a technique called seek and destroy. Basically, it looks dumber than it actually is, but it's super helpful for learning engineers. Is you can boost this up like 10 dB here, and we're just going to listen to it, and we're going to find the spot that's causing the issue here.
2.
Let me find a spot that's more singy right here.
Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know what to do.
So again, at 2.21, so we can make this, the wider you make the EQ, the more subtle it's going to come across. We're only going to get rid of a little bit here.
Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know what to do and where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7. Don't smoke it. Help all the kitties most of all.
So here, I'll get rid of the reverb here. And what we're going to hear is
Obey your
just a comparison.
warden. Now, there are rules that you should know what to do and where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look.
You can hear it's a little more, not pushy, but just the way the microphone's going with his voice is just more mid-rangey. When we get rid of this,
Obey your air raid
just warm.
warden. Now, there are rules that you should
Without it,
know what to do and
with
where
it.
to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, listen. 7. Don't smoke it. Help all the kitties most, yeah, most.
Now here, there's like this mid-rangey spot in Will Daniels' voice here that's just coming across, and it's just a microphone thing. That's all it is. It's not how he actually sounds. It's just the way that things got captured.
Obey your air raid warden. Dum, 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 dum,
Yeah, what is this?
dum, ba-dum, dum, 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 da, ba, da, da, dum, dum. Obey your air raid warden. Dum, 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 ba-dum, dum, 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 dum.
Bump this up a little bit.
Obey your air raid warden. Dum, 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 ba-dum, dum, 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 da, ba, da, da, dum, 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 dum. Oh, stop, look, and listen, listen. Dum, 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 ba-dum, dum, dum. Mate number 8, kitties, most, yeah,
Without the
most
EQ?
of all,
With the EQ.
please obey your
I'll start it back here.
Obey your air raid warden. Dum, dum, dum,
Without
dum,
it?
dum, dum, ba-dum, dum, dum,
With it?
dum, dum, da, ba, da, da, dum, 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 dum. Oh, stop, look, and listen, listen. Dum, 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 dum,
Smoke,
dum,
don't smoke
Mate number
it. Help all the kitties most, yeah, most of
So here I notice that I'm hearing the EQ. One of the things that I don't want to do as an engineer is I don't want people to hear my work, if that makes sense. I don't want somebody to listen to it and know that inherently something has altered, that there was a recording process. I think that's distracting, and I think I want the musician or the audience to listen to it as just the quartet, not the quartet and Josh mixing it. I think I want people that know it, want to appreciate the mix, but I don't want to, hear the post-production side of it.
Obey your air raid warden now.
And what I was hearing was too much low in Will Daniels' voice where it sounded synthetic. It didn't sound like a real human being the way I hear them talk or sing.
Obey your air raid warden now. There are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen.
There's like this bright part of James's voice that's yeah, it's like this area more.
Where to go when you hear the sirens blow? Stop, look, and listen. 7, don't smoke. 8, help all the kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now.
Now, I've talked to James before a couple of times, so I know what his voice sounds like, and this is hitting more of like what I would expect when I'm listening to him sing. Now here.
Obey your air raid warden. Da ba da da do. Oh, stop, look, and listen. 7, don't smoke. 8.
Don't smoke.
Da ba da da do. Oh, stop, look, and listen. 7, don't smoke. 8, help all the kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden. Pop, ba-da.
Yeah, that sounds more like like your voice. That's just too mid-rangey.
For information most of all. Obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff or rain. Today is the colder bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. 4, stay home. 5, keep off the highway. 6, don't phone. Obey your air raid warden now. There are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow. Oh, stop, look, and listen. 7, don't smoke. 8, help all the kitties most of all. Please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now.
So what I just did is I took Will Daniel off the reverb. I thought it was making it too muddy. I wanted to see how it sounded, and so I took him out of the submix, and I'm having his track go directly to the master now. So now what we're able to do is just hear him.
Don't smoke. Help all the kitties
And now I'm trying to bounce the harmony parts against his.
Please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now. For information.
I'm going to send him a little bit to the reverb, just so I have something there and it doesn't sound like they're in two different spaces. So panning is our left and right space. How much left, how much right, how much center. Reverb is how much three-dimensional space, forwards and backwards from here to the back of the room. The more reverb that I put into the track, the more it sounds like they're in the opposite side of the room, singing in this great cathedral or whatever, and I'm hearing them at the top of the stairwell. The less reverb or mix that I have, it's more of that direct sound. The more I'm creating that they're right here in front of me. Finding that balance is difficult, and it just takes repetition and finding out what you like, because it's tough because you want to get a good balanced, authentic sound, but you also don't want it to be so washy or so dry that it sounds weird.
Mate number 8, kitties, kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
Yeah, it's still kind of.
Mate number 8, kitties, kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
Yeah, so it's so subtle, but it's gonna help make everything more glued together here.
Be calm. 2, get under shelter. 3, don't run. Obey your air raid warden. 4, stay home. 5, keep off the highway. 6, don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, and don't smoke it.
So I'm noticing that this section, like the front here with, actually it's its own. Yeah, I'm just.
What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, and
Right here. So after this part here, I'm just going to make its own break. This part's volume is fine, but when he goes into the dooms, I need this to just be more consistent in terms of volume, because I'm having a hard time finding the balance, and I think this will help me.
Listen, and don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden to the fore now. For information, most of all, obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
Okay, get rid of the mouse clicks over here. Fade things in. So now this is the part where I'm going to be teaming up with.
Obey your air raid.
So Pennington, walk me through the the melody structure of who has the melody where, and then I'm gonna start doing some automation here so that we can make sure that the focus is always in the foreground.
Sure, yeah. And Kyle, I see your question here, and we'll get to that as soon as Josh and I talk through this, and we'll get to your question about multi-tracking one voice on one mic. So this song mostly stays in the lead part. I think the first time that it strays away is the marker that you have generally at that marker. It's a little bit before the marker that you have. Like if you want to go there,
I think it's right before "Help All the Kitties."
yeah, it's on the listen 7. That's kind of how I picture it in my head. Is the descending listen that comes right out of the unison is where I picture it. There isn't really a melody there, so but I like that. I like that descending triad. Dot dot dot. So if you hit play, Josh.
Look and listen to
Yeah,
me.
right out of that unison is where dot 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 and the tenor. That's where I imagine the tenor singing the melody until about 150 is the timestamp that I wrote down. So it's a little bit before I think the marker that you had. If you want to hit play.
Look and listen to me.
So the bop, bop, bop.
Yeah, and then tenor through for the next couple of bars.
Don't smoke. And listen to me. Don't smoke. Don't smoke it. Up all the kitties. Most.
Yep, and on the word most there, it goes back. That's when it goes back to James Isley.
And I don't know how close in you want to zoom on this, but the repeat of "Don't Smoke," I think I'm off the melody. Is that correct, James Pennington?
There isn't really a melody there. I mean, that's at
Gotcha.
least not in terms of the original song. I'm pulling up the sheet music right now. Yeah, there isn't really a that's just a device that we put in there in the arrangement that's not in the song, and like, that's another situation where I kind of like I like your part there as the predominant one. That tension with the way the melody is written, or the way that the part is written. I think it's fine to keep you as the predominant voice there, Matt.
Cool.
Hear the silence flow. Stop. Look and listen to me. Don't smoke me. Of all the kitties, most.
So
Yep.
the what I'm going to do here is called automation. So basically what's going to happen is whenever I move this fader here, it's actually going to help me, or it's going to make the adjustments that I want to the overall track here. And you said Kyle had a question on something?
Yeah, Kyle's question was about he's a multi-tracker, and so it's him recording all of the parts on the same microphone. So he just given everything you've demonstrated so far, do you have any tips creating a good natural mix from one voice on one mic?
Yeah, just finding out what register the part is in, and try and carve out the with EQ the other parts away from it, so that way you can kind of create that separation, because it is their same voice on the same microphone. You're going to get that filter 4 times. So if you're a lead singer and if you're a tenor, like, try and remove some of those low frequencies, not to the point where it sounds like it's a phone recording or something like that, but just enough where it sort of creates that separation where this is the bass, this is the frequency area that they live in, this is the lead. Baritone baritone and lead, you should probably leave full frequency, just because they change so much. And tenors, you can usually roll off the highs. With bass, you can probably roll off some highs, so that way it's not so much of the air or the articulate, but not to remove the articulation. It's all like fine movement stuff, but it's all about like carving out these little spots here. And like I said, if you pan things out, that really helps kind of separate that space to help you be able to mix everything. when you're just listening in mono, you can always listen back to mono to make sure that everything you're doing is coming off um, constructively and that you're not, taking away from anything. I think this will be that's sort of like a good test. I have a thing on my controller here where I can hit a button and it flips it to mono, and I can take it out. That'll, I usually use that as like a late stage when I'm just doing final adjustments, tweaks here and there. But yeah, definitely listen to it on different systems. Use, if you're on headphones, listen to it in your car, listen to it off of your phone, but without the headphones on. Send it to a buddy who has a different phone and listen to it off of that. Make sure that your mix is consistent. And once you kind of figure out your weak spots, then you'll start knowing, okay, I'm consistently not adding low frequency, or I'm adding so much low frequency that it sounds good on my system, but everywhere else it's overbearing. Now I know, okay, I don't have to EQ as much lows as I want to, or that I feel like I have to.
Look and listen, and don't smoke me. About the kitties, most of all, please obey.
So that was a quick little one pass. Let me see how this sounds.
Look and listen, and don't smoke me. About the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now.
These sections I just wanted out just a little bit. Here's a cool little tidbit of information. So there's something called JND, or just noticeable difference. That is that the human ear can only hear 2 decibels of difference between the first thing and the first sample and the second sample. If you ever feel like you're adding, if you're like, I just need to bump it up a little bit, start at 2 dB. And if it feels like it's too much, then you can start going in half increments from there. But if you're ever like, it just needs like a click up, a click on your phone or on your iPhone, Samsung, whatever, 1 click is 3 decibels. So that you always know, like, okay, when I'm listening to this, does it sound like it's a click, or does it sound like it's almost a click? That will be a good way to kind of gauge yourself and helping you figure out, where do I need to make this louder without having to, like, just, throwing darts with your eyes closed, sort of thing.
Yeah, and this whole section, Josh, this instrumental section,
Yeah,
I would say that this is another section where the tenor is the melody voice, and Matt and Will Daniel, if you guys are still on here, then you can obviously interject as well. But I think that is probably
just old school acapella melody on the top voice.
Yeah, this is kind of, this is like a big band break.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yeah.
So we have it come down here. The lead takes the melody back, and then have him come back to the breakout section. Right?
Say that again.
So the melody, tenor melody, down the almost, or whatever this word is here, come back down, and then when it goes to the breakout, back again to kind of being in the foreground.
Yep.
Great. Let me get back here.
And now we're back to lead.
Yeah. There was something, I think there was like a word or a dot or something like that got cut off here.
Yeah, I was hearing that, but I didn't know if it was, I couldn't tell if it was just Zoom that was dropping it. So, but it looks like you found it, and it was not.
Yep. My apologies, Matt Parks.
Do your job, man.
For information.
And this part, I probably would want to automate James to come out a little bit more, or what I could do is just this, like. Yeah.
For information, most of all, obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a hop.
And then the unisons, I don't want it to be one voice over. I want to hear the nice blend of all four parts here. So cool thing about unison is that the more people and voices you have on the same note, the less loud that everyone has to be to maintain that same sort of balance there. So I might bring this down here. Maybe
Josh, we have a couple questions. One is from Ron Kritzman. Ron asks, does all the filtering cause any phase shift, or is the software good enough to keep it in line? Remember, I'm from the old days of actual analog hardware filters that shifted stuff all over the place.
Yeah, so if you boost EQs, you are inherently creating phase because you're adding frequency dynamics that aren't actually there. If you're taking away, there's less phase issues. So if you're EQing, the best bet is to remove more EQ or do subtractive EQ. I do a mixture of both because I found that whenever I do subtractive EQ too much, I lose the definition of it. And obviously, the knob is designed to go both ways of increasing and decreasing. So yes, there are some phase issues, but since everyone's recorded on one microphone in their own house, it's probably not going to create that much issue. If it was everyone in the same room, yes, there would be a lot of phase issues that you would have to work with. But at that point, you would be working with two microphones to kind of capture the aural sound as opposed to individual voices. So for me, I always think of it as the quartet is an instrument. It's like a guitar. You wouldn't put 6 microphones on a guitar to record each string. No, all strings work together as a unit to create the sound of the guitar, and from there place it into the room. So with quartet, 2 microphones, one that faces the lead and tenor side or lead and baritone side, and then the one capturing the bass clef or the bass and tenor side. I think that's the most authentic and natural sounding. Plus, you get all of the little things that that happen when people sing together, where sometimes just magic happens. Sometimes you just nail a chord, or there's an undertone that happens, or you look at each other and you both, everyone changes the interp on the spot. I like capturing that performance more often. But since we're doing all this stuff in like multi-track recording and mixing, there's not too much phase issues that we're dealing with because everyone's isolated. What's the next question?
Next question is from Eric Blum. Eric asks, do you have any tips for recording all these different takes and how to organize that? I can tell you from my perspective as being one of the people in this quartet.
Assistant engineer.
An assistant engineer, thank you. That's right. I don't know if you want my tips because it's we do it the way, at least the way that I do it. I don't want to speak for the other guys in my quartet because I think we've kind of all got our own systems for how we do it. It's pretty ad hoc the way that I do it. I just keep, I hesitate to advise anyone to do it the way that at least I do it. Josh, do you have any tips for keeping track of takes? I'm very manual. I literally will listen and like write down what I think are the best takes. I keep everything so that in case something doesn't work the way that doesn't work or doesn't line up exactly how I had it in mind, I have other takes that I can plug in and see. But yeah, like I just keep notes like in a notebook or on my iPad. As I'm listening, I write down and just try to keep track so I don't have to try to store everything in my brain. I can go back and refer to my notes and try to get a reference for what each take sounded like or what I might need to get again.
Yeah,
Josh,
for sure.
yeah.
That's pretty much the way I like to do things too. Is I like to make sure that I have like a pen and notepad to write on, so I know what I'm doing different takes. If I'm recording a different ensemble, absolutely have pen and paper next to you. You know, writing down notes and stuff. With this, I'm able to create something called playlists. Or if I wanted to like comp something, I'm able to do multiple different takes on something, and then I can rename them later. So I can say that, you know, one section has a better this, one section has a better that, and then help myself organize it that way. It can get very confusing with these different things, with like tenor 2 hyphen 05.l, tenor 1 hyphen 21.l. Like it's very easy to just get confused and lost on all this stuff. So usually just writing things down, or if you just start renaming the regions, because I think I can should be able to just rename this. Yeah, I can rename this. You know, Matt Parks rocks my socks. You know, that I can name it literally whatever I wanted to. You know, so on and so forth. And that will, I think it only changes the file in the session. It doesn't change it if you're looking at like, you know, recording take 1, recording take 2, recording take 3, like in your actual like file bin here, that we're like looking at with all the different parts here. So yeah, that's definitely something that takes a little bit of time, and the more organized you can stay, the better your overall mixes can come out. But yeah, writing there on here, where they also allow comments, so I can type something here being like, oh, this take, you know, this take sucks or whatever, you know, don't use this, or, you know, great until, you know, 246 or something like that, and then, you know, kind of go from there. So they kind of give you plenty of tools to kind of to kind of keep organized in your own way. Just find whatever method works best for you, to be honest. Though, was there another question? Or
Question. Kyle has a question about speaking of phase, minimum phase versus linear phase plugins. I definitely know what that means, but I'll let you answer it.
Since we're doing all these isolated multi-track stuff, that's like not something I'm thinking about. That is, you know, for me, I'm going for the certain colors and stuff. That might be a little bit too far on the sciencey mathematics side for me to be worrying about that stuff. I try and make sure that when I'm looking at here, let's look at this dot section here. We're looking here, we're seeing all the you know, the compression and then the refraction coming back here. And like if I had multiple different tracks here that were recorded in the same room, I would just make sure these are all kind of going in the same way. But in terms of like plugins and stuff, it's, since this is multi-track recording, it's not going to matter as much as if it were you know, an orchestra recording, and you have, you know, 40 microphones in a room, and you have, you know, 10 room mics and stuff. Then you'd have to be a lot more worried about phase and what kind of plugins you're using. But for isolated quartet stuff or multi-tracking, not a thought.
For information most of all.
I think I just need him to just come out a bit more, or I need the bass to be a little more settled in. So I might do a little bit of both here.
For information most of all. Obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
Okay, so now we've kind of gone through this stuff here. Let me listen to this from start to finish without stopping.
The U.S. Office of Civilian Defense was established in 1941 to prepare for possible air raids on the United States during World War II. Blackout drills were commonplace, during which neighborhoods across the country would practice going completely dark. The prevailing thought was that enemy planes couldn't target what they couldn't see. About 6 million American civilians volunteered as air raid wardens to ensure their neighbors knew what to do in drills, and if it ever came to it, could respond appropriately during an attack. This is a silly song about that.
Dum 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 ba ba dum 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 ba ba dum dum
Be calm.
dum
2.
dum
Get under shelter.
dum
3.
dum
Don't run.
dum
Obey your air raid warden.
ba dum dum
4.
dum
Stay home.
dum ba dum
5.
ba dum
Keep off the highway. 6. Don't phone. Obey your air raid warden. Now, there are rules that you should know. What to do, where to go. When you hear the sirens blow, stop, look, and listen, turn in. Don't smoke, don't smoke it. Of all the kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden.
To the fore now. Dum 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 ba da dum ba
For information, most of all, obey your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
Yeah. I'm probably content with this to the point where I would send this off to the quartet and be like, hey, what do you guys think? Or what do you do you find spots that you need more of, or do you're not hearing? In terms of like sonic clarity, I think everything's really kind of where I want it to. I think this section here from the unison.
Get in a huff, our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough.
I just feel like I'm just hearing a ton of Isley here.
Get in a huff, our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough.
Yeah, that's true on just in singing unison and like singing an octave like that in general.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, we have two voices on the top and two voices on the bottom, and just balancing that out.
Yeah, if you guys were doing it live, it would be easy peasy. But now we're
Right.
multi-tracking it, and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm in my house singing
Yeah.
part. How loud do I have to be? And just as loud as you can be, and then we'll fix it in post, right? That's
That's right.
That's just how these things are going to be working for this. So
Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough.
Baritone.
Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Is enough.
Doo-doo. Doo. Be-doo-be-doo-doo.
Enough. Panic, don't get in a huff.
Oh, plosive.
Panic, don't panic.
Oh, you know what? Haha. That's funny. I just realized I was editing the bass part here.
Nate wants to know how much Melodyne is enough.
None. Yeah, Melodyne's tough. Let me leave that as that.
Don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Don't panic, don't get it.
So here we have a plosive, and you can see it, blah, right there. So this will be a cool editing tip for all y'all. So we have our plosive here. The great thing is we're on unison. What we can do is, oops, this is, let me chop this up this way so that way there is, do this, and then have this guy zoom in that way.
Panic, don't get.
Let me listen to just,
Panic, don't panic, don't get in a.
yeah, so then we can even scooch this out that way, create a little half pipe.
Don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough.
Great. So now when we hear this in the quartet, we're not even going to notice it.
Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Hey, your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Hey, your air raid warden. Stop, don't panic, don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
Was there anything that the quartet here was
Yeah.
hearing that you want changed?
Yeah, I made a few notes. One is at about a 120 timestamp.
Yep.
That's the word "keep off the highway."
Mhm.
That was a. I think James is. You can see that James is James Isley's lead line. It's a little bit. If you listen to it, it's just not lined up exactly. So his part needs to be moved to line up more closely with me and Matt.
Gotcha.
Stay home. Keep off the highway.
Ah,
Just a
yeah.
little, that's just a little eager. Yes, if you can.
I'm just gonna match it to.
Yeah, and this was an instance where this was not a problem of recording. This was a problem of, I think, how I sent it to you. It just it was its own little track. So we're having to line it up.
Fired.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Off the highway. Keep off the highway. Keep.
What's my scooch? Is it? Nope.
Not that.
Oh, it's because I think I have my. Hold on. It's because is my nudge feature here. I want to make this not a second, but I want to make this a frame. Because this will give me like the most minor one subframe. Is that what I want? No, that's not enough. Okay. Yeah, one frame.
Get off the highway. Get off the highway. Get off the highway. Get off the highway.
It's like just, I'm going to have to match it up with the tenor part here. Be-dee-be-dee-doo. Because we're all kind of in different spots here. You can see this is, I think this is key and this is poff. Key, poff, the highway here. It's probably going to be the singing song part here. So good thing is I could probably line this up, but let's see how.
Let's listen to it.
Off the highway.
That's.
Can you go back? Can you get a little bit longer runway into it?
Yeah.
Stay home. Get off the highway.
I could probably even move this a little back. That keep is just a little.
Just a touch.
Get off the highway. 6. Don't fall.
One more time.
Was there anything else that you heard?
Yeah, 130, about 135.
Mm-hmm.
My part is too loud. You can see it right there. Da ba da da dude. I'm just coming out too much there. On that last dot, especially, you can see it on the timeline.
Just physically see it. Yep.
Yeah. And that's such a minor harmony part anyway.
Yeah.
That's better. Could maybe even stand to be a little quieter.
We'll do one more dB just for you, Dad.
Thank you.
What else we got?
On the tenor melody sections, did you just boost the tenor or did you balance the lead part accordingly?
I bumped up the tenor part. Did I need to back off on the lead?
I think that might be worth exploring since the lead is now a harmony part. It's not. It
doesn't
like
need to be
when James is singing it, he would assume more of a harmony support.
Yeah, take
role.
a step back and kind of like snap his fingers a little off the mic, maybe turn his head, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Stop, look, and listen. Don't slow me. Come on, the kitties, most towns, stop all. Please obey your.
And then that's where he snaps back in.
Oh, right. Then he comes back in. Right. Let me redo that then.
Oh, stop, look, and listen. Don't slow me. Come on, the kitties, most towns, stop all.
Messed that up. Okay.
Come on, the kitties, most towns, stop all. Please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
I wasn't super thrilled with that. Oops. Let me start over.
Oh, stop, look, and listen. Don't slow me. Come on, the kitties, most towns, stop all. Please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
It's that most. It just comes off as like heavy.
Come on, the kitties, most towns, stop.
Yeah. Here, I'll do this.
Kitties, most towns, stop all. Please obey.
Smooth that out.
Kitties, most towns, stop all. Please obey your air raid warden to the fore now.
And then here again too, right? on the breakout.
Yeah, and not as much here, but I
Right,
think
yeah.
I think a little bit, not as much as you had gone, but still
Mhm.
probably just a touch.
Kitties, most of all, please obey your air raid warden. To the floor now. Dum, 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 ba-da, dum, ba-da, ba-da, da, 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 ya, do, 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 da, 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 da,
I could probably. I think it needs just a smidge more on some spots.
Yeah.
To the floor now. Dum, 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 ba-da, dum, ba-da, ba-da, da, 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 ya, do, 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 da, da, ba-da, da, ba-da, da, da, da,
Was that good for you, or did you need more of him there? Was there spots that you felt?
I mean, it's hard to tell.
Sure. Yeah, this
But
is
I
kind
think
of
I think it's the right direction, definitely. Matt, James, Will Daniel, what else you guys hear?
Sounds really good from here. Of course, I'm listening on a cell phone.
Yeah.
I think if you can turn the tenor up during the loud high part, that'd be good. Just kidding.
I'm not.
Looking at the whole track, it was like, geez, that thing looks loud. No, it sounds good though.
It's because you're like singing an octave higher than the next highest person.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another section at the scat, actually at that same section, Matt, where you're in heaven or whatever, that I'm getting a little bit ahead again with just straight rhythmic togetherness. Those dots up to the little minor second you wrote in.
In the back
I don't
section.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, if that would probably have to literally go through and see if we can light up each of those dots because they're so separated. But there's definitely a couple where I think I'm getting ahead again.
Some are, some aren't. We could definitely do that.
That's the only thing I was hearing. It's really not even that noticeable. But of course, I'm remembering when I recorded it, and I'm more picky of my own voice than anybody else is. So
of course, that's how everyone is.
Yeah, it's like the third.
Yeah, just to.
Like the third and fourth one there starts to get a little bit sloppy.
Yeah, you can even see like here if I go down, this is where we are, bloop, and this is where the rest of the quartet is.
Right.
So here, we'll blip there. Then here you look good. I mean, you might be a touch ahead again, but
yeah, it's not bad.
And then
Yeah,
here, I mean, we still want to make it humanistic, so that's the thing. So
yeah, no, the back four. I mean, if we're thinking of that as two bars, the back four seemed fine. It's just that first bar was a little bit wonky.
So we can probably move this guy here.
This is back in the old days when someone would have just taken a razor blade to the tape and and
synced everything up and then glued it together and hope you didn't screw up the edit.
Yeah.
God, I could only imagine, dude. I don't even want to think about that right now. So now you're a little behind here to the point where it felt odd, but here I'll make you touch forward here just to get this stuff here.
Yeah, that's already way better.
Yeah, I think so too.
What else we got? Anything?
That's
I don't. I'm
that's
good.
pretty much the notes that I took on one listen. Can we go to the obey on the tag?
Yes.
Just check the balance on those parts.
Obey.
Obey. You.
Yeah, tenor is probably still a little loud.
Yes, definitely.
No, I'm kidding.
Please don't. Please don't.
Come on.
Obey your
Too much, too little?
It's hard to tell.
That's not what I asked.
That bird in the background didn't like it, or did like it. I don't know. There was a bird that said something.
Obey your that is enough. Obey your
I think that sounds good.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that what it was 2 dBs or whatever, that I think that helped.
Yeah. Let me just check something real quick here.
obey. Obey. Obey your
Let me hear this with this. Oops. When did that happen? Okay.
obey. Obey.
James, is that a bird in your background, dude?
It's not me.
It's my house. I'm sorry.
Is that your baby?
I wish. I am taking a break from work for a second. There's a freaking loud bird next to me.
Add it to the mix.
Gandalf heard the bird and he just hopped up on my desk.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my god.
Hey, Gandu.
Obey your air.
Let's listen to this whole section here.
Don't get in a huff. Our aim today is to call their bluff. Follow these rules, and that is enough. Obey your air raid warden.
I'm happy with that. Anything you guys want? You guys want to hear from start to finish again?
Can we hear how loud the air raid siren is in
Yes.
comparison to the first couple notes?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Is it? Do you know? Did you roll it back at all?
The
I've been
siren?
kind of jumping in and off.
I rolled off the first few sections here from Will Daniel 1.5 dB. The siren is the one that Pennington got. We swapped out that one, so it's a softer siren than what's in the Logic session.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a slightly different one. This one doesn't have a cranking sound to it, which is makes
Yeah,
sense.
I found a sound effect that didn't have the mechanical sounding of the crank.
Oh, I love the crank.
we still have
We still
use
have
it,
the crank. It's right there.
but-
Oh my gosh. If you turned it down a little bit, it would probably not be so jarring. It's just so freaking authentic, man.
So for
A hand crank.
context for everyone listening, I bought an actual air raid siren and recorded myself operating it, and
Everyone in his neighborhood has been freaking out.
when because I bought one that was the cheapest one that I could find. It has this very mechanical. It's a hand crank siren, but it has a very mechanical cranking sound along with the actual siren. So the one that we've been hearing was a sound effect that I downloaded that is the same thing. But Josh, if you could play the one that I recorded, so you can hear the.
Maybe turn it down a little. So freaking loud.
You can hear that.
Oh, I love it so much.
So I don't know. We have both that we can use. Ben Porter has asked, what was Gandalf's opinion on the siren? You know, the funny thing about cats is that you never know. I figured that he and our other cat Peach were gonna hide for days because of it. They did not care at all. You just never know.
Been playing too much Call of Duty at home. They're like, yeah, whatever, dude. So we have the air. So we have our two options here.
This is a silly song about that.
And obviously we can edit it to make the fade out easier.
Yes,
Or
yeah,
there's the one we have been listening to.
Is a silly song about that.
James, in the video production version of this song, are you gonna be shown cranking that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we may need to go with the one that I did based on the video, but I think it will line up fine.
Oh my gosh. What, Ranger? No, watching you crank that is so freaking awesome.
Yeah, Zoom. Ben Shively's right. The Zoom is not the biggest fan of the siren.
Yeah.
Probably wants to make sure that we don't send this out to the neighborhoods and have people running out in the middle of the streets.
When I was recording that, the neighbors on one side are, it's a young family and they have a couple of kids, and I was doing it in the middle of the day, and I was very careful to make sure that I spaced out each time I recorded it, so I didn't scare the kiddies.
Oh my gosh.
Going door to door. It's only a test. I'm just recording this. It's so dumb. Trust me, everything's fine. This isn't on par for 2020 at all. So yeah, at that point we can just put up a vote for whatever siren you all prefer.
Yeah.
The no crank or the authentic one here. And we can always edit this to make sure that that this is cutting off before the whatever we have here, so that way we can make this the same time frame.
And I think I was talking about this with you, Josh. We'll have to move depending on how everything lines up with the video. We may have to. It may not be exactly in that place. The song may start earlier. We may not need as much time of the siren. We'll just have to line that up later. But we have all the components right now.
Yeah, and I think so. And
we have a question from Kyle here. I know this is mainly about quartet sessions, but can you touch on dealing with remote recordings of individual chorus members trying to make a good mix for remote chorus projects? Those are very popular right now for a lot of obvious reasons. So do you have any tips on recording for those?
Virtual choir?
Yep.
Here. I'll just open up. Oh, you know what? I did it in another software. So now you guys are going to see my session that I did on PreSonus Studio One. I did one for the high school students, and I'll kind of open up that session. We'll kind of just blaze on through it. So slightly different looking software. Waiting for this to load. All the plugins and everything transfer back and forth, so I don't have to worry about spending money on something and it only works on Pro Tools or whatever. Basically, what the story is, I'm the customer service manager of a Guitar Center here, and with working there, you have access to different stuff. And so what I thought I had received was Pro Tools Perpetual, but it was actually only a 1-year subscription, and it expired like a few days before I had a recording session, or the day before I had a recording session. So what I have here is basically everyone. So we have Tessa Walker's choir, and we have all the students here. We have the male voices down here, the female voices in blue, and then some fill-in spots that Tessa has here. Now with this, there is with the male voices, it's really hard because there's only 2 of them. And then they like doubled up their parts, and then a buddy, John Cifuentes, filled in some other parts there where he's singing too. So I have John mixed very far low, and I have these 2 main parts kind of more up. It's a little bit harder. I think for the purpose of this, I'm gonna just mute the boys, because I think it'll be easier to balance with the just the female voices here. So for this, what I'm trying to do is create that space of a choir. So there's no pitch correction. These are high school students trying their best and singing. And some of them, when I got the video of it, it was like, you can obviously tell they're recording this at like 2 a.m. because they're singing so softly, and they're like trying not to wake up mom and dad, and they realize like, oh my God, it's due tomorrow. But basically, what I try and do, there's no math or like really any tips for this. It's really apply the reverb to it, and start mixing the voices where you don't start recognizing parts. If you recognize somebody's voice, then they have to come down. And that's what I was noticing in the unison section with Isley, was that I was recognizing his voice, and I'm like, it's a unison section. It's supposed to be 4 parts singing the same notes. I don't want to hear anybody's part or voice more than anything else. So here, like soft singer. So there's parts there that are high up there that are kind of coming through, but when we have the reverb and everything, that's what's creating that space. That's talking about that 3-dimensional space of, here are the voices of people recording in front of their phones in their bedrooms, maybe 2 feet in front of their faces. When we add that reverb, now we're pushing them all the way off to the other end of the concert hall. With some of this stuff, I might remove some of the high frequency information on each voice, which I don't know. I don't even remember what I did on this session, because I'm looking at it now and I have it super mini here. Let me expand this. Master Race solo. Let me see. Girls. Yeah, I have just EQs and compressions and stuff here. So for the girls, I only did basic compression here for like the spots that I thought I was getting buildup on. But I mean, I didn't really even EQ anything. I just kind of pumped it full of reverb, so that way it was more in a space and less front forward, because that's the thing that's going to be jarring with virtual quartets, is that you get that very tight articulation sound, but when you listen to a choir, you're not hearing them in front of their 2 inches from their face. You're hearing them in the nosebleeds. You're hearing them in the front row. And even if you're sitting in the front row, there's still 20, 25 feet between you and the risers. So, Yeah, so I think it's just really finding that balance of when do I stop hearing somebody's voice as one person, when do I hear it as a section? And I think that's, starting with all the faders down and then just kind of, pushing them up one by one. That's basically if I wanted to oh man, I totally forgot the shortcuts for this. I think it's W. Yeah, okay. If I wanted to, completely start this over, I would take all of this stuff here and then just bring everything down and then just start. Let me mute. So also the panning is huge here. So to make sure that not everyone's in one particular spot, adding that panning will create that separation if they're on the risers. So that's kind of what I have here is I have people on the left, have people on the right, and just kind of have it build up where I'm kind of creating that digital image. So these last two voices here are Tessa, the choir director singing. She said, "Don't have me in the mix. Like, just keep me down. I'm just there for reinforcement." So that's what I have here for. So she's just kind of creating the bed there. So now for this, I have this wonderful soloist Mazare, that she sings towards the end here, creating that space and that area of like getting everyone out of center and having her voice come out predominantly and letting her soar at this point. I mean, honestly, her voice is so good. I'm gonna fly. I'm gonna fly above the clouds. I'm gonna fly above the clouds. Oh, I can be gone. I will fly. And so since she's a soloist, she gets special treatment. So I gave her own separated track, her own EQ, her own compression. A lot of this other stuff, I was just kind of dumping everything to the boys and the girls section here. But since she's a soloist, her voice has to stick out. So I think that's kind of what I would probably, say that would be the thing to do for that. Let me just, yeah, that's totally cool. Yeah. And I think that's all I got for you guys. If anyone has any questions, I'm here to field them. If not, then we can end the session. Up to you.
Josh, can you export our song and send it to us so we can hear it not over Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Let
I
me,
got a question for you, Josh.
yes.
When you're recording for a different style, or when you're mixing for a different style,
Mhm.
do you need to do like research on what those sort of recordings normally sound like, or what's your preparation for that kind of thing?
For the most part, the stuff that I'm working with, I've kind of been involved with it. So with barbershop, I know what it's supposed to sound like. With classical music,
Sure.
I had someone in my life that was very involved with classical music, so I ended up going to a lot of concerts and seeing a lot of shows and like learning all the theory and stuff behind it. Definitely though, like I mixed an Irish pub song that I had no idea what I was doing. Like they came for the session. We like set up microphones. We were just guessing. The session was just literally just guessing, and it came out great. But I remember like taking the time, like, all right, let me listen to like some Irish music and see how this pub music is supposed to sound. How much compression are they using? Is it like there's a lot of post production? Are they just like leaving it? Definitely a lot of research of doing that way.
Okay.
That is important to know because the way that you are like hands off with classical music wouldn't be the same way that you would handle death metal music. And with like jazz, like you don't want to what's called quantize, which is like line up all the drums and cymbals and stuff so that way all the hits are happening at the exact same time. Like you don't want to do that with jazz because jazz is all about the groove, the feel, how you're hitting it, the articulation of it. Death metal though, it's got to be like on a grid, like you have to know exactly like click 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 that double bass is going that entire time. And that's important to know what genre, because every genre has its own vibe and its own mix. And I think that it is important to know what you're kind of working on, and it's also really fun to not know. I got asked to mix this African gospel tune, and wow, talk about like not knowing where to start. Like literally, I'm like, what instrument is this? And they're like, oh, it's this. You hold it like this and you hit it with this thing. And I'm like, okay, like, is this? Do I need to hear this? Is this just background? And he like, working with him, he wanted me to drive to his house and mix it at his place because he didn't want to send me the files. And I would sit there and be like, okay, like I'll mix it. You have my ears, but what am I doing? I have no idea what needs to be the focus here.
Holy cow.
Yeah. We'll call this Obey Your Air Raid Warden. We'll call this 1.0. And then we'll keep going from there. Secret Best Friends album. The James Pennington and the Hey Daddies. And track number 1 from year 2020.
Gotta make sure you get all that metadata right.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want this to get screwed up here. And this is another thing that I love about Pro Tools is that I have this offline bouncing or the exporting of the file, and it takes no time at all. With the PreSonus one, I almost have to like sit there in time and just like watch it bounce out, and that's very frustrating. But yeah. So right now I've already exported everything here, so now it's all set. I just send it off to the client. They say yay or nay. They give me the thumbs up. They give me the notes. I look back to it, kind of fix them. But that's basically it. In 3 hours, we got through looking at the stuff, learning about audio, editing it, mixing it, getting approval from the quartet, sending it out. That's basically a quick flash by of how we kind of mix something in this sort of setting. And probably if I'm like just working on this, it'd be good to have the quartet guys here for all those like minor musical details of the mix, because that's important. Like I would not have gotten any of those edits that you guys were talking about on my own. I would have made everything sound good, but kind of going back to like the mixing engineer's role, I don't want to do something that I think is right and then send it off and they're like, what is this? No, like fix this, do that stuff. Especially when you're saving these files and stuff, you don't want to go back to something you can't fix or lose your undo. Because as soon as I save this and I hit undo, I've lost all the previous potential edits and moves that I can do. So always kind of save sessions in sections of like, this was my first edit. And if I need to go back to it, I don't have like 3 days lost of Pro Tools stuff that I have to go back to. So like if I send this off to you and you guys need another edit, and then after a while you're like, I really like that first mix better. Can you just do this to it? I have a session saved aside for that to go back to it.
Okay.
Let's see. Is there anything? Kyle had a question a couple minutes ago. Are you a fan of busing individual tracks to tenor bus or lead bus? I only bus things if it's in groups. If it's one track, I just leave it alone. I guess this would be for like choir stuff. Absolutely. Cause then I can control the whole section. If it's, like a chorus and there's microphones in front of the section, or if there's something like that, yes, I would have, or if everyone's, doing virtual choirs, yes, absolutely. Cause then if I move one, like if the tenors are too loud, I don't want to move more than 2 faders to make an adjustment for volume. I just want to move one and then be over with it.
Yeah.
I think that makes everything a lot easier to control. The less faders you have to move, the better. Back in like, before the 80s or like 80s and earlier, what you would have to do is when you were recording this all the tape, you'd have all the members of the band put their hands on the faders and they'd have to move everything in real time as it's printing the tape, and you would have to rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it. It's like you only have so much tape, and if you flub a move, guess what? Everyone's gonna be looking at you being like, dude, the mix, man, we're paying for this time and you're flubbing this. So it's great to have digital audio and to be able to edit this and to hit Command Z or Control Z and undo. That's a blessing, especially now. It's also a curse because people have unlimited amount of takes, and sometimes people like myself, where I'm recording something, and since I have that undo or that delete button, it's very easy for me to be like, no, that wasn't it. No, that wasn't it. No, that wasn't it. And next thing you know, I spent 4 hours and I have nothing. I have literally nothing, and then I get mad and then I delete the whole session and then I don't record, and then I, tell everyone else, hey, I'll mix your stuff, but don't make me do my own. Any other questions before we close out?
I do have one more big one if I haven't asked enough questions already.
That's what we're here for.
All right, so you've made your stance on Melodyne pretty clear, and in regards to audio fidelity, I do agree with you. So if you get some things where all the takes are good and there is just some jarring distraction stuff that happens once or twice in a part, is there an alternative to deal with that, like pitch-wise? Would you slice it and resample just that clip, or?
If there is something that's bothering me here, and I'll share this screen one more time here. If there was like a section here that was bothering me, what I would do is I would, I'll do it on James. Duplicates everything here. Let's say there was only one section here that needed to get fixed or something like that. I would delete everything else here. And what I would do is, this has all the same sounds and EQs and everything that I have on it. If I had to absolutely do this and there was no time to do any other recording, because we've dealt with this before where, where we have to fix something, I would literally pop this into Melodyne. I think this is going to open up this. Great. Is this? Oh, this is the instrument one. What do I need? Is it other? Yeah. Slightly different one. Yeah. So if there was a particular section that I needed to fix, I would transfer this section in. Great. So now Melodyne opens it up here. I get to see all the pitches and stuff. I would, at this point, have this here. This is kind of a big stretch that I have, but we'll do it. So this is Melodyne, and then create new audio track. Great. What I'm going to do is this section, instead of going to bus out 1 and 2, I'm going to have this go out 5 and 6. Audio 1 is going to receive 5 because it's, let me change this then. Will it let me? Yes. So now this audio track that's been melodyned is going to record with the Melodyne. I'm going to have it come to this guy. It's going to record onto a new track with the Melodyne feature onto it. Oops, and then let me make sure that this is receiving 5, that's sending 5. Great. We're not going to hear anything because it's not going to the output. Great. So now that I have that there, I can delete this. Yes. And now I have this audio file that when we listen to it, so now I have this Melodyne to whatever I would have needed it to be. And now I have this own section, and I might name this Melodyne obey. And at that point, I would literally just replace it. I think that's the best way to go about it, because as soon as you apply Melodyne as one plugin across the whole thing, you're going to get all those harmonics and those futzy things that make it robotic. If you're fixing a word, this is the absolute way to do it, where you're extracting the one part, you're applying Melodyne to it, you're recording it as its own new track, and then applying it as an edit, and then basically fixing it from there. I think that's the most easy way to do it if you weren't if you were trying to avoid it sounding like Melodyne. I think that's the best way to go about it. But yeah, I would try avoid Melodyning the whole thing, just because it does naturally just add weird stuff to it. But yeah. Anything else? Cool. Well, great, guys. Then I will catch all you guys later. Thanks for hanging out. If you guys ever want one-on-one help with mixing or recording or any of that stuff, I do offer lessons. Reach out to me. I'll let you know how much I charge. I usually have Tuesdays and Wednesdays free. If you guys ever just are like wanting me to listen to something, by all means, send me something. I'll listen to it. If you want to like open up a session and do like the reverse, where you're Zoom broadcasting and I'm watching, and then I could listen to it and be like, oh, you should consider this, you should consider that. Definitely, by all means. I usually go by like an hour. So let me know. Until then, hopefully we'll see all this stuff on the YouTubes eventually somewhere soon, on the Facebook videos and stuff. But I think that's about everything that I got for you guys. So until next time, have fun, guys. Enjoy.